Okay, so I'm uploading a YouTube video of my book by Lisa Delaney, moi, called Knickers in a Twist. And I'm going to read it, and I've attempted to make this video a few times and various things have happened and it hasn't worked out, so bear with me because I'm exhausted now from reading this book over and over again. But it's copyrighted Lisa Delaney. The name of the book is Knickers in a Twist, Lisa Delaney with no E before the Y. Lisa Delaney on Facebook, Lisa Delaney 27 on Instagram, and Lisodel, Lisodel on Snapchat. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for a literary agent or publisher to publish my book. The synopsis is my mad life living in the madhouse, and it's about the woes and tales and goings on of what happens in the high support mental hostel, which I'm in because I was locked out of my home, and due to a legality that I'm still a homeowner of my home, and due to a separation that has dragged out 6 years, basically I've been left in the madhouse. So anyway, it's given me a story that one couldn't make up. So I've literally scribbled it down, pen and paper. I can't type, won't type. So here it is, the first 3 chapters of Knickers in a Twist by Lisa Angela Delaney, myself. So, it was all going great guns until I used my boutique expensive baby pink scarf as a noose around my neck, suspending myself off the goalpost in the gardens of a mental institution. It was only a few days previous that some bloke was ripping my knickers off at a bus stop in Dundrum, albeit not in a kinky way. No, nothing sexy about it. It all started when I was dumped in McDonald's toilet. My sexy, trendy, gym-going African prince dumped me in McDonald's disabled bathroom nonetheless. We met on the top floor of Dundrum Town Centre. It all went downhill from there. Having gone on an online dating app, telling myself, sure, there are married couples who met online. No, Lisa, they're not all desperate divorcees or oddballs that never settle down. No, Lisa, some of these guys are genuine, not just looking for the ride. Maybe there's one, and all I need is one. Unfortunately, I should have known the minute I left the house without a clean pair of pants to my name that Commando was a far superior option. In fact, a cup of tea and a pair of knitting needles would have been the better option. So we met. He kissed both cheeks. He was trendy, fit, pretty light black skin, and a full head of hair. And that's where it ended. Actually, it ended 5 minutes after that, when he waited outside to escort me for a vino alla Winters. As I changed out of my work uniform in the disabled Jacks and Mackie D's, I emerged after a dusting of bronzer, a coat of lipstick, and a slick of mascara, in my sexy bling top with the leggings that I like to think give me a peachy bottom. There I was in all my glory, ready to rock and roll, but bang, the dirtbag was gone. Vamoosed, vanished, done a Houdini, disappeared. So there I was on my Todd, lit up a smoke, but I was in agony. Those cheap online knickers were bet on, in a twist, chafing, dug in. Worst of all, they were that tight they wouldn't come off. So I decided, well, feck it, I'll go cry into a pint. So there I was on my Tobler, knickers in a twist, sipping on a sweet pint of cider. Now, just to rub salt in the wound, the pub cigarette machine was broken, but by the grace of God I bumped into Petey, an old acquaintance. No, not in any way interesting, but he did try to smack the gob at me once, and I turned him down for love out of the moment. Me and my bloody loyalty. But what started as trying to bum a smoke off a relative stranger in an already awkward situation turned into a lovely chat, which led him to escorting me to a 24-hour garage where my prayers were answered when I purchased a much-needed packet of John Player Blue and a cream egg. We sat on the bench and had a deep conversation. It would have been an all-round lovely evening if the knickers weren't cutting off my blood circulation. I started to fear having to have my arse amputated. So what came next had to be done. I said, Petey, there's nothing sexy about this. However, you're going to have to rip my knickers off. After a shameful, humiliating explanation, I tugged the side of the leggings down slightly around my hips, and with brute force he ripped my knickers. He was the perfect gentleman, gave me his coat until he flagged me down a taxi, even gave me his number. And after much trying to convince myself that although he was my polar opposite, he was into Slayer and heavy metal, and I looked like Barbie girl. However, I convinced myself that he had a heart and a half to make up for it. But even though I got the digits, that was the last I heard from Petey. Knight in shining heavy metal wasn't even interested, and who could blame him? Because although I am curvy, stylish, and dare I say it, hilarious, there's a catch. Yes, and a pretty fucking big one. Not only am I separated, soon to be divorced, a very messy divorce. I'm not an average run-of-the-mill mother. But you see, the thing is, I'm homeless. I live in a hostel. Not a dirty, junky, delinquent hostel. No, worse. A psychiatric hostel. Someone described the whole psychiatric system to me as social, political, economic repression. A surplus member of society sent off to the spider web of the system, trapped in many impenetrable layers of injustice. Headlines, news captions, horror films, and psychological thrillers stigmatize mental health issues. They put the fear of God in people. After being in the psychiatric system for the whole of my adult life, I can hand on heart tell you I have met the most damaged, tortured, disturbed, hurt, gentle, most innocent, enlightened souls. They can greaten you, hating you, drive you up the walls, and be the most welcoming, kind-hearted beings you're ever likely to meet. It doesn't by any means that there aren't a few that would get in your very last nerve. I'm changing their names because some of those people know people, and some of them would do anything for a buck. Let's face it, if they literally borrow, steal, or beg on a daily basis, quite honestly I wouldn't put it past them. Let's start with a good one, Nervous Girl. Nervous Girl doesn't get out much. Nervous Girl, and usually for there, always has a lifetime supply of cigarettes. Maybe because she doesn't share, ever, at all. Nervous Girl smokes like an expectant father outside the delivery room. As the inmates go, Nervous Girl is good company, in an extremely quiet, reserved kind of way. Then we come to Kermit on coke. Think the voice of Kermit with a megaphone. Think a malfunctioning Energizer bunny stuck on repeat. Think the most melt-the-head kid's toy that repeats the same sentence over and over again at the decimals of a foghorn. Then there's Wanda. There's no flies on Wanda. She's told me so, ad nauseum. If I saw Wanda on Dublin bus, I would sit in the other end. But since I know Wanda well, I've gotten to like her at her good times, and I've learned to tolerate her at her worst. Then there's Charlie. Charlie takes herself very seriously. So seriously that when she starts to diagnose people, if you didn't know any better, you'd think she knows what she's actually talking about. She speaks with a drawl, a whiny, deep drawl, and considers herself director of the services, a real law unto herself. People there are the proudest in one sentence and the lowest scabs in the next. One minute they know they have rights, whether it's the right to eat the last banana, but the self-righteous reason of why they're entitled to it is aired in spades. 10 minutes later they'd settle for a cigarette butt, and would you have 20 cents? The food here, that doesn't seem to agree with a lot of them, has gone from being served on plates to plastic prison trays. They're all convinced, as a matter of fact, they're either on the wrong meds or they don't need them at all. But there's one thing they'd fight you with a brick for, which leads me to laxatives. The demand for laxatives is worse than the demand for Louboutins and a 50% off sale after the Sex and the City movies just aired. By God, do they demand their laxatives. When it comes to being handed them, they will take no prisoners. No more than a hangry diva needs their Snickers fix. So for these reasons, toilets are filthy, the air is polluted, and if you weren't immune to it, you'd pick up the kind of virus that would require absolutely no laxatives at all. There are people here who can get quite indignant as they unwittingly deem themselves quite respectable, which quite honestly errs on the side of ridiculous. Ending up here is like falling down the rabbit hole. It's like a slightly strange alternate universe. It's like the Netflix series of The Good Place. Like brand new runners in a pair of wet socks. They look good on the outside, but damn are they still uncomfortable. To look at, these people look like everyone else, but to live with, they are an inhumane form of torture. No one's comfortable here, except the people who know no better. There are people who want out that are unfit for society. Then there are the real weirdos, the people in the services who actually call in to visit. The minute I'm out the door, bolting out the gate like Sonia O'Sullivan, only in nothing but a top and a kilt, I'll have war paint slapped to my face and I'll bellow "Freedom!" so loud it'll echo from Dublin to the cliffs of Moher. You will hear me from Southampton. Then there's the flats 4 foot across the way. And one of them is one of those weirdos. You know, the ones I mentioned that actually come to visit? She's making herself at home, making herself part of the furniture. She comes over every night and bangs on the door with the vigour and urgency of a woman who just ran for their life after meeting Larry Murphy down a dark alley. Reason being, she's just plain loud, like Buddy's Pizza meets Gordon Ramsay, up to their eyeballs preparing a 10-meal course in minutes for the UN ambassador. One of the very obvious side effects of the medication is the belly. A belly that could be let out as a bouncy castle to toddlers and small children. Then there are the droolers. They're not drooling because they've just seen the finest fillet steak on a bed of scented mash with a trickle of juice. No, the only place they'd see that is on the afternoon show. No, they drool because they've been doped up to the gills so much their head is French fried. There was a woman here, and during her very short stay, she was so shocked you'd swear someone just pissed on her Orla Kylie. The place is a mix of rich kids, thugs and everything in between. I described the building as a middle-aged couple's bungalow, modernised in relatively recent years, only with 21 beds overhead. 19 out of 21 people are smokers. A handful are alcoholics, and the news is like a call to prayer. I was wrongfully put here. I was left here under a perverse course of injustice, a cock-up that determined my fate, or a deviously, perfectly orchestrated plan. In this house where a stock of 500 yogurts feeds one man must be handing brown envelopes to get away with sole-handedly eating every last yogurt to himself. I asked myself, why God, under a smile that would sink 1,000 ships? A servitude of suffering in an obscene abuse of illegality, a fight to stay sane when inadvertently being condemned to the madhouse. The dragon-flared nostrils on the man, foaming at the mouth, rotten with cruelty and steam coming out of his ears, namely my ex-husband, locked me from my home. Yes, I had mental distress. It was due to being married to him. He said for years he had a plan to destroy me. Normal human beings don't set out to destroy other human beings. Damaged, angry, violent, hateful people do that. Chapter 2. Hospital was an escape that caused a high that made the crack only 90, like a session with proper characters. Entertainment at its best. Guitar, chain smoking and spiked sparkling water made for a hoolie, sing-song Szechuan of a lifetime. The food was as rich as Rowley's Bistro. I found a rich bland bitch with attitude who is still my soul sister, who I love the bones of, He was a stay-at-home mum and a genius into the bargain, whom could walk into a room as a human rights lawyer and annihilate every man. She could kick patriarchy's arse or run the country. She sparkles, she's sunshine and every man's dream in the look stakes. Blonde, blue-eyed, petite, pretty as anything, a flash of her $1 million style her $1 million smile would rival any Hollywood femme fatale. Like Reese Witherspoon, but with an insight I've never seen in any doctor. The people there in general were quite together, believe it or not, compared to the hostel. The hostel I was left in by the hospital because of what they term accommodation issues. I'm sure you're wondering at this point why I had nowhere else to go. Have I no family? Well, I do. Bear in mind, my family saw me in a psychiatric hospital due to a hellish marriage breakdown, rather than wrap their arms around me with support. They say Lisa has a little thing. She's living in a little home because of her little mental problem. God forbid they'd ever admit at the time that they point blank failed me. That when I went into hospital escaping another kind of torture, that this was the classic distress of a victim of abuse. At the time of my admission, they both held my husband in very high esteem. He was so high in their opinion that a word said against him was complete insanity. Of course, in my parents' eyes, I was put Paddy last. Like the time as a child when, as a little dot of a girl, I stood up to the neighbourhood bully, 0 fucks given that he terrorised the whole street before I retaliated. I came home and I was beaten to a pulp for attacking another child. That poor boy. That, if I had a crystal ball at the time, was a benchmark of things to come. Here's me, the type A typical surplus member of the family, the nuisance that nobody knew what to do with. My mother, though slightly inclusive, her husband and their daughter lived their lives happily as a family unit. My father, his wife, and her 2 ready-made children, to which in their eyes I will never compare, are also a happy, successful family unit. Then there's me, not really accepted by either. So here I am, in their eyes, a surplus nobody that could be anybody, socially, politically, economically repressed, in my home with my little mental problems that the staff of professionally accredited psychiatric nurses and social care workers can't find. That the chief consultant over the bones of the service said to my face on behalf of all of them, he's embarrassed I'm in this situation. I'm not angry at my parents. 2 clean, well-dressed, articulate, respected, university-educated members of society. Just don't have the wherewithal to see. My father is pinning the tail on the donkey, and with an extreme turnaround, blames my husband with venom. My mother, who lives in Mary Poppins land, just buries the issue. Though they're both wonderful, intelligent, compassionate on many levels, they put no onus on themselves of responsibility of the disastrous circumstances or the ruination of their own daughter's life. The rug was literally proverbially ripped from under my existence. And it was the bloody makings of me. Eyeballs deep in complete insanity, I found superior mental strength, endurance and mental clarity. I am my own superhero. I'm warm-hearted and hard-nosed as fuck all roll into one. I'm wise, impenetrably strong. I am kick-ass character, a tough mother, and a strong motherfucking individual. Why? Because I've had to be. Because I was left 2 choices. Sink in shit or flourish in fertilizer. I don't apologise for telling you this. I don't apologise for believing in myself 100%. And I will never apologise for being who I am again. I will not be reduced to a punch bag, to a doormat, or to a simple person. I will not find my life ordinary or anything less than extraordinary. I have rebuilt every shred of damage and become a beautiful piece. I am not a paranoid schizophrenic. I am not a mental illness, nor am I surplus. I am whole. I am a beautiful soul, and a smile that lights up the darkness. My social media should read, in permanent employment as full-time mad bastard. Went to the University of Life. Watching, one flew over the cuckoo's nest while eating pizza in the madhouse. My 11-year-old son hit the nail on the head when he WhatsApped me a meme. I'm not insane, I'm mentally hilarious. That boy's got a head on his shoulders. I'm an Englishman in New York, or an alien in an asylum, seeking other life, life outside the psychiatric system. It was one bank holiday Monday when the nurse who some consider a saint of our Lord, who I consider saint of all staff, provided a madhouse miracle. He arranged for us to eat steak. He turned prison plastic trays to plates. As Rick the social care worker served me mine and asked if I'd like more gravy, I answered, knock yourself out, Jesus, this is some dinner. The saint of all staff told me Rick made it himself. Jesus, Rick, says me, I'll take you home with me, when I have a home, that is. When I get out of this God-forsaken place, chimed Rick. I laughed and said, and you only work here. In the corrupt psychiatric services, the saving grace are the staff. At times I've made mincemeat of them, being the hot-blooded, feisty female I am. The term they call that, or the definition they put on it, is going from 0 to 10. But credit where credit's due. There's some of them who, if we met in another life, I'd be their very best friend. They're the friends I never had. Marigold, to look at, is the white red-headed Tyra Banks, who did a stint in catwalks in her youth. She's been like a mammy. We've also clashed at times like mothers and daughters do. But when I was nearly admitted to Vincent's after a chronic vomiting bug, she minded me like her own little girl, with the care I haven't received since I was a child when my mum took me into bed and made sure I had socks on in case my feet got cold. There was Rick who took the mick, a Northsider who brought the comedy. There was Jessica, my key worker, who was a salt of the earth gem, a local girl who'd worked in the service since the age of 16. I loved the way she talked sense out of every situation and how she fiercely defended the service users, because mental health is reality. There were beautiful black agency nurses who were the personality of dignity and brought stability to unstable patients' reactions. There was Rachel, my other key worker. Rachel worked part-time to my dismay. She was picture perfect, like an all-American girl, only Irish. Blonde, beautiful, tall and athletic. She inspired me like nobody's business. She inspired me to believe in myself. The big daddy of the whole place was the saint of all staff, who, though huge in presence, was the gentlest soul. He was the kindest gentleman, with the faith of a priest, the patience of a saint, and the wisdom of a Buddhist monk. When he smiled, you couldn't help but feel happy. When he smiled, his eyes smiled too. There was a story in those soft, crinkled eyes that sparkled like the rarest diamond. He was my #1 fan and supporter, and he was my hero. He could listen with the gentlest ear and defend me with the fierceness of a tiger. He was to me the kindest soul, spiritual to the core, and placed there by the grace of God. On the very same bank holiday Monday, after Wanda going off on one, after sitting on a wet toilet seat, I sat next to nervous girl Aisling and thanked God for my life. I had gratitude for Aisling, who was pleasant and gentle, like having your girlfriend over, chilling in your sitting room. I thank God for the almighty lessons I learned. I thank God my parents raised me right, imparting onto me the intelligence they passed on. And I thank God for the gutter, scattered in sparkling diamonds. I thank God that my parents let me fight my own battles. And I remembered a Marilyn Monroe quote, "Sometimes things fall apart so better things can fall together." Like the saint of all staff had brought to my realization, God has a plan for us all. This has been a roller coaster of a chapter, but it's certainly not the end. For every tear I've cried, a piece of me died. For every time I went from 0 to 10, I kept my spirit, and though my heart has been broken, My spirit never was. Unlike Negative Ned, Charlie often referred to him as the Prince of Darkness. He had been hard done by and was dry as Gandhi's sandal. Sometimes there was a wry comic element to his woes, but I saw Ned as someone who was hurt, someone who was betrayed, and I formed a camaraderie with Ned, who liked a simple life with the most complex knowledge. Maybe this happened him because in ways he knew too much. He was a man of few words. He enjoyed creature comforts as well as being a successful landlord. He experienced a school of hard knocks and had done a stint on the streets. He religiously had 2 pints of Guinness a night in the local to get out to normality. He was made up with a straight smoke and a pint of the good stuff. Shane, shame on you, was the boss of the whole place. Well, he is what it says in the tin. Shame on Shane. Shane was the epitome of a poker up the hole, full of his own importance. He was so important, he didn't give the residents the time of day. Myself being one for calling a spade, or an underworked, overpaid yuppie a wanker. Shane was so important he didn't even turn up. Being paid through the flute, an expensive sports car, a holiday home in the south of France, was clearly no incentive to actually do a day's work. I'd say shame on you Shane goes to wine tasting evenings and lives a very far removed life from the people in here. He walks around like he's afraid of catching something, and for a man of his standing, his money never bought him manners. He gives meaning to the expression pompous prick. Mental illness isn't catching Shane, but mockery is. Chapter 3. The staff had more rights in an 8-hour shift than any of the residents ever had. The staff had the right to look up everyone's history, write up notes, which I found judgmental depending on what humour they were in, could deem how they described somebody that day. The residents weren't entitled to read the notes on themselves. I wonder would the staff get away with so much horseshit if they could. The staff spent a bit of their time here and there linking in with the residents. They thought that was Oscar-winning support. I always thought a PE teacher was the handiest job in Ireland. That is, until I met these guys. They, unlike the residents, have the code for the kitchen and are partial to making themselves food we wouldn't even get at Christmas. The majority of their working day was spent holed up in the staff room, eating and drinking tea and coffee, cake and chocolates to their heart's content. There are some that are kind-spirited, and there are some that are on an authoritarian high horse. There are some that think they're above us because they don't have mental health issues. Being honest, that last statement is questionable. If they don't want to deal, they shut the door in our face. They get paid well to be here, and they can leave their troubles at the door and go home to their lovely, comfortable lives. They are basically being funded by us. Without us, they would have no job here. Without us, they wouldn't drive the cars they drive or lead the lifestyles they lead. They, to the people who live here, the people on the breadline, a vulnerable minority group, are the salt in the wound of a life of poverty. Sometimes a psychiatric patient had something a lot more charming about them than people who consider themselves normal. People with mental illness take things as they come. They take a person for who they are without judgment. They're pure and simple, clever and kind. They have nuggets of wisdom that not one of the professionals possess. They have funny tales and painful stories and are grateful for every little blessing. That Monday was like any other. Sky News was swapped for the soaps when evening came. Charlie whined in an inadvertent bitchy way, appearing to look pleasant, which was a cloak for her jealous, miserable nature. Kermit, by the grace of God, wasn't in the room, but I could hear him from wherever he was. I could hear Charlie draining one of the staff members like the energy vampire she is. She's an awful bitchy maggot, I said loudly, hoping she could hear me. After pumping a cigarette into me outside, I was wise to Charlie. I was wise for bullying, bitching, backstabbing crap, and I was aware she was bitching the back off me. My blood boiled and my temper kicked in. I'm sick of that jealous old whore, I announced to Lacey, the little Filipino staff member. She automatically assumed Wanda was the cause of conflict and started laying into her. It's not Wanda, I cried. Wanda's very nice to me. It's that bitter old drag Charlie. I know, announced Wanda. She thinks she's a doctor. We chuckled. She came to me and said, Jesus, Lisa, will we ever get out of here? Will we ever get out alive? I laughed. People know about here, Wanda told me. They say, look at those poor people in there, what they have to go through. They're afraid to come in case they get admitted, she chuckled hoarsely. Don't let your son see you here, she said. But she said it in the kindest way, with big earnest brown eyes, and I felt glad to have her as a friend. She never stops talking about herself, Charlie, she said. I sat there one day and she wouldn't stop talking about herself. Wanda threw her hands up in a what the fuck motion. I thought to myself, she said, what did I do to deserve it? We both laughed. You're comic relief, I said. I'm Molly Malone, she replied, and I thought if her life hadn't been the way it had, she would have been an all-time Irish grace. I came back from a cigarette and Kermit was sitting on the chair, suspiciously quiet. Ah, poor Kermie. He was really a nice old sod. He loved telling stories where he could name the year even if it was 1982. He started to speak and Aisling immediately shushed him. I often had a lovely conversation with him and found him really a decent skin. He could chat for Ireland even more so than me on a roll. I loved to hear his stories of life in Ireland in times past, and by Jesus he didn't leave out one detail. In fact, he was so very pleasant, I nearly regretted pulling the piss out of him in the previous chapter, until he talked so much I was nearly popping paracetamol. Yet there was something nice about him. Now, mister, I chirped, give Aisling a break from the chat in the room. Let her watch the TV for a bit, we'll chat later on. I was always kind and polite to him, as he was to me. I actually had a lot of time for him, but soon after it was time for me to hit the sack. As I made myself a hot milk, the radio resonated in my ears. Someday I'll put the clouds behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, that's where you'll find me. Good night, I said to Ned and Tom, and brought my tired, weary body up the stairs with my handbag and cup of hot milk. After scrolling through Facebook for the guts of 40 minutes, I decided to go down for a smoke. The mental health service promotes positive self-talk, plus my mother had said to me, be your own best friend, which I took very literally. So I told myself, go for your smoke, Pet. And when I decided I wanted another one, I told myself, feck it, go on, chicken, you deserve it, you can always buy more. Literally the way I'd speak to my best friend was the way I'd taken on self-talk. And sure, I deserved a bit of kindness and reassurance, in the way I speak to everyone else and desire to be spoken to the same. Am I mad? Yes, certifiably so. Good night, God. Good night, life. Lights out for this petal. That's all I'm going to read because my battery is going to die. There's more to chapter 3 and I'm continuing to write the book. But that was Knickers and a Twist by Lisa Delaney. Delaney with no E before the Y. You can get me on Facebook, Lisa Delaney, no E before the Y. Instagram, Lisa Delaney, no E before the Y 27. Lisa Delaney 27. Or Snapchat, Lisodel, Lisodel. And that was that, folks. That's a wrap for now. So I hope you enjoyed it. And fingers crossed, it's a #1 bestseller, critically acclaimed, Man Booker winner. And it goes great guns. So cheers for watching and thanks a million. Take care. Bye.